Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number LB4311-350-638. This is a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch single acting spring hinge, full mortise, residential weight, lube bearing, steel base, satin, brass, plated, and blackened, also called antique brass. This is a very common spring hinge. Used in a lot of typical applications, residential applications for 1 3/8 door. This would be very typically seen. Let's dissect the part number. First of all, LB stands for lube bearing. That means that it is a concealed, maintenance-free type of bearing construction from Bommer. The 4311 is a reference to the pattern of screw holes, which are called template pattern on this hinge, and the 1/4 inch radius. The -350 means that it is 3.5 inches tall, and the height comes first on hinges like this, and 3.5 inches wide. The 638 means two things. It means that it's steel based, okay, and that it is a satin, brass, plated, blackened, or antique brass, US 5, 609. 638 is the proper way to call that, because it's 609 would mean a brass base. 638 means steel base and an antique brass finish. Full mortise. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaf there that the leaves are meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame when they're brought parallel. This is a UL listed hinge for a fire rated application. Not that you would have a 1 3/8 fire rated door, but you could see an 1 3/4 fire rated door prepped for a 1 3/8 hinge, or pardon me, a 3.5 inch hinge. Non-handed, you can use these for either left hand or right hand doors. Self-lubricating bearings, the LB lube bearing is a maintenance-free sort of construction. The residential weight means that the thickness of the leaf is 96 thousandths. And that means it's going to work with hinges between 85 and 109 thousandths of an inch preparation. Okay, so this is going to be a single acting spring hinge. Now where you're going to see this sort of hinge is going to be used, I'm assuming it's an 1 3/8 door. You're going to see it in a residential application where you want the garage door to close, or you want the basement door to close behind you. You want bedroom doors to close because they're unoccupied. There's no need to heat them as if they're an occupied room, whatever the case might be, where you're going to see this. It's a confluence of 3.5 by 3.5. The color, antique brass, the radius corner tells me it's a wood door and a wood frame sort of situation. Considered a template pattern. There is a link below this video on the actual exact locations for the screw holes. If you're not sure if this is the proper hinge for your application, by all means refer to that template. You'll be able to see exactly where those screw holes are located and all of the other dimensional properties of this hinge. Also, the LB4311 is certainly available in your 4x4. It's also available in several or all of the common and even the uncommon architectural finishes as well. Now, a spring hinge like this, you are able to use this compatibly with a typical 3.5 inch hinge because the axis of pivoting is compatible. You might have a 20-pound hollow core door, and really one spring hinge is sufficient for the job. You might have a solid core door, and 2 spring hinges are what's needed. Regardless, the bottom line is you can mix and match this with a 3.5 inch hinge. Regarding how many spring hinges you should have on a door, if it's a hollow core door, 1 is going to be the recommended, dealing with doors up to 3 foot by 7 foot. If it's solid core, 2 for sure. Now the truth of the matter is, I'm a big fan of having a lot more spring hinges on a door than what's necessary. Not for the obvious reason, but I've installed these, I've maintained them, I've done this over years and over seasons where there's different air pressure conditions, and I have simply found a much greater amount of success when you've got reserve spring power on hand to get the door closed. You push the door open, the spring hinge has got to basically stop the door and then start to swing it back closed overcoming the weight of the door, overcoming the air pressure the door encounters, overcoming the resistance of the latch bolt hitting the strike on the frame. And when you've got not enough spring power, what you end up doing is having to set the tension so high just to get the door moving with enough inertia so that it will get all the way closed. At that last 5 or 10 degrees, there was no real spring power still left controlling the door. But when you've got additional spring power, an additional hinge or 2 additional hinges, you can control that much better, meaning that you can share the work across those spring hinges so that in the last crucial 10 degrees of closing, there's still enough stored energy in the springs to get the door to the latch. It's like a tugboat. They don't go very fast, but they can pull a lot of weight. And having residual spring power, energy, stored spring energy on reserve at that moment is how you're going to be able to get the door to close, latch, but do so without slamming. If it happens to be a fire-rated door, you're going to be required by code that the door will be not only self-closing but self-latching. So keep that in mind. My experiences. Now, setting the tension on this hinge is very easy. If your order comes in a box, and they typically do, the instructions will be on the back side. If your hinge does not come in a box with the instructions, there is a link below this video to those instructions as well, so not a big deal. The bottom line is this. You've got this called the tension collar that is pointed towards the top, always, regardless of the hand. When the tension collar is pointed, well, you don't have to have it, but in our example, it will. You'll get a tension rod, and you'll get a tension pin, steel pin that you see there. Now, into the tension collar, when the tension collar is pointed up, if it's pointed down, just reverse this. Insert the rod into one of the holes and turn it clockwise. And as you do that, you reveal new additional holes, and it's into one of those new holes that you'll insert the tension pin. 3 holes total is what's suggested for setting on this. And that's how you set the tension. Put 1 and then you try it. Change it to 2 and then try it. You continue to test it until you get the proper sort of installation. We've talked about those screw holes a lot. You're going to get all wood and all wood screws in a complementary finish, and this package has all wood and all machine screws in a complementary finish. Bommer. The last thing I'd like to point out to you on this hinge is the logo. It says "Made in USA," a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. If you have any questions on the Bommer number LB4311-350-638 single acting spring hinge or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us.